Everybody, welcome. Um, I would call out to all of you, but there's 53 and I only see a few on the screen. So I will make sure to just thank you for coming and being here. We're going to introduce ourselves and share a little bit. And then we have another little series of very short clips and images just to show a little bit about behind the scenes process. And then we'll talk, we'll have a conversation, and we'll leave some room toward the end for people to ask questions, but you can write in the chat at any time. Yeah. So Helen, do you want to start? You want to introduce yourself?
Oh, yeah, my name is Helen Drea Carrito. I was born and raised in Roxbury, September 3rd, 1941. So I have 8 decades of being a colored girl growing up Roxbury, and living within all the different plateaus and dynamics and this, that, and the other. I have 2 boys, 2 sons, one in his 60s who's passed away, and the other in his early 40s. And I am happy to be the senior archivist here at the Elma Lewis Center. So thank you, and I feel very welcomed. Thank you.
I'm going to invite someone else among us to go next.
Coco, go next.
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Coco Rosenberg. I use they, them pronouns. It's a little noisy here, so you all probably can't actually hear it because Zoom's gotten very good at that, but okay, that's better. So nice to meet everyone. I use they, them pronouns as a point of access. I'm a white, non-binary femme with bright blonde hair, wearing a red shirt, red lipstick, and these fabulous peacock earrings from my grandmother. I am the Assistant Director of Youth Development at the Elma Lewis Center. I'm also a member of the Social Justice Archive Network, one of the archivists. I'm an artist, an educator, and a care worker here in Boston. And I'm really delighted to get to be in conversation with beloveds today around the work we've been doing this last year plus. And I'll pass it to you, Priscilla.
Thank you. Saludos todos. I'm Priscilla Andrade. I'm so grateful to be here. Thank you all for joining us in this space. I am an Egglestonian, mother, writer, business owner, and most relevantly, an archivist with the Social Justice Archive Network at the Elma Lewis Center at Emerson College. And it's such an honor to be able to bear witness to these memories, stories, and histories, and to dig into it more with everyone else here. And yes, the business is Exodus Bagels. Thank you for the shout out. And I'd like to pass it to Ashley.
Hi, everyone. I think my microphone is a little off, but if you can hear me, I'm Ashley Tarba DeStefano. I also use they, them pronouns. And I'm the Assistant Director for Community Engagement here in the Elma Lewis Center. And I also provide support to the Social Justice Archive Network and the Elma Lewis Legacy Circle. And I'll be running tech today, so if anyone has any problems or questions, please send me a direct message. Tam.
And to multitask and type and talk and listen. I'm not so good at that yet. I'm Tam Mirko, and so I'm a mom and story weaver, time traveler. It's what I really feel like we do when doing archival work more and more. And my official title at Emerson is Executive Director of the Elma Lewis Center. I also teach some classes, and I'm just really grateful to be here. That's my phone ringing. The spirits are calling us. I don't know how to turn off the office phone here. So what we'd like to do is share with you a little bit about the behind the scenes. So if you were at a teach-in last year, you would have heard us talking a bit. Helen's voice appeared. You called it in, remember?
Oh.
You left a message.
Right.
And so what we want to do is just show you a little bit of, it's a snippet from a year-long series that we're doing. It's a monthly series in honor of what we call the Elma Lewis Living Stories Project. And we're going to talk about who Miss Lewis is, and she would have been 100 years old this year, and what the project is. But first, we want to just share with you a little bit of how we've been working on this for 2 years. Some of us in different segments over the last 2 years. Some have come in later, some have come in earlier. And we've been working primarily with people who knew Miss Lewis best. And they themselves are also some of the planets and happen to be located in Boston area, Black luminaries as well. And most are in their 70s, 80s, and 90s. And so we've been in deep story circle with them. So we wanted to give you a little snippet of the last, we call them kitchen table conversations. We'll explain a little bit more about that later. But the last one was last Thursday. So every third Thursday of the month until September 2022, we have something called kitchen table conversations, which are conversations with people who were deeply involved in different dimensions of Miss Elma Lewis's work and legacy. And so Ashley, if you could run the series of clips.
Brother, 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 there's far too many of you dying. You know we've got to find a way to bring some loving here today. Yeah, Father, Father, we don't need to escalate. You see, war's not the answer.
I had Leslie answer.
For all
I
the
had
love
Leslie
can
answer.
conquer hate. You know we've got to find a way to bring some love here today. Picket
No one
lines
gave me that album.
and picket signs.
Lewis gave me
Don't
that album.
punish me with brutal.
There you are, Helen and Priscilla.
Mhm.
You can talk.
I'm just amazed. I mean, you take me to the zone, sorry. A lot of my style is because other indigenous they
You've seen this.
That's the Bloxbury I grew up in. I used to ride that train almost every day of my life.
That's last Thursday.
They had jobs, I didn't. I lived at home at my parents' house and continued to rest on them while I brought this project to a place where it could at least keep. Again, art is not separate from life. Art is not something to be added to the people. Art is the guts of the people. Miss Lewis founded the Elma Lewis School of Fine Arts in 1950 out of her Roxbury apartment, which later moved to the Temple on Elm Hill Avenue. In collaboration with many artists and educators, these spaces facilitated the self-development and artistic expression of young people in Roxbury. In about 5 years, we were overrun with students. For one thing, I didn't accept money from boys because I wanted boys. As traditional Black people.
Yeah, no, I know. Me too, believe it or not. That was when I saw
What was that? You with me when I'm thinking back. Yes, indeed.
because I kind
I'm good.
That's I believe that I went to 80. Oh, there she is. Yeah. Mhm. That image of Miss Lewis, I just have to say it. She looked more like that all the time than a lot of the images that you see around town. But when I would go to her house or go to school or whatever, that basically was her look because she hadn't turned gray yet. We were all young then. And she had, and I talk about her mouth and her pearly teeth and her disposition. She was like this 100% of the time, unless she was hurt or mad. But that's the way we would greet her or be greeted by her. So that's very important to me. And I want to qualify something real quick. I'm not really a spokesperson. I'm more like a social activist. And when I get angry, I can run my mouth and say what's on my mind. But what is happening to me is something that I never expected and I can't call it. But when we go back in time, like we are right now, I get emotional, sorry. And a spirit comes over me that makes me admit that I miss her more than I'm willing to say. Because if I admitted how much I missed her, I would have to admit how much I miss my mom, who was a giant in the same legacy, and how much I miss my dearest great grandmother, Melnia Cass. So there's a lot of missing that doing this traveling with you guys is pulling up for me. So I just ask for your patience and your understanding in my amateurist kind of being on, I call it TV. Okay. So thank you. I got it out and I said it. So now if I act like a fool, it'll be all accepted. Thank you very much. Oh.
Somebody in the chat says you have nothing to apologize for. Somebody else, oh, that's Priscilla, you're a gem. Helen, never a fool. We love you. We
Okay.
do love you.
Thanks.
Mhm.
I gotcha.
So I think we can pause the slides and come back fully. Yeah. So that's what it's like moving into the portal, no? I feel like maybe let's honor that moment. What is that like for you, Priscilla and Coco?
Well, as I think is kind of customary in our Sajong work, I will start with my body. It's like so rarely are we feeling the inside of our body that when we do, it's a really particular moment. So just all of the love and gratitude and the journey that we've been on just comes right to the surface and bubbles right up. So although I didn't know Miss Lewis and I didn't have the many decades of time and tutelage that Helen had with her, that is still stirring up in me because of the spaces that we've held together and the opportunity to connect to those memories, moments, and that shared history. So it's always an honor. I'm always kind of brought to my core, truly, when we get into this work, when we come together and make space to remember. So I'm just grateful, deeply, deeply grateful. But yeah, it's like a little flame that then looms up and it's filling up my whole body and all my atoms are buzzing.
Yeah. Priscilla, I can always tell you're a writer. Your way with words is just you manage to give name to things that are hard to name, that we feel. But you know, I think that part of what you're naming too, Helen, in the missing is this bridge that we're creating when we do this work to being present in so many places within time and within ourselves. And I think that, you know, going into the portal, going into the work and into the story is creating those bridges and connections that are already there, but it's just opening up sort of the doorways a lot of the time. You know, I think, like Priscilla, I did not know Miss Alma Lewis personally, but feel a deep connection and resonance in a lot of this story work with you, Helen, and with the Living Stories project has been connecting to my own stories, right? And my own lineages, and you know, seeing where those bridges and connections are that we don't always get to look into, and feeling those as well. And so, you know, you all know, like my grandmother went to the same school as Miss Alma Lewis, 10 years behind, and is a peer of Helen's. And to see those connections and then to see the ways in which we're able to sort of center stories that are here and are present, but don't always get centered in the same way, is just, yeah, it moves emotions in ways that feel simultaneously overwhelming and generative. And I said this in the chat, Helen, but your tenderness and your ability to tap into that is just something that I have deep gratitude for as you take us through the stories that you hold.
Oh, cool. I want to go back a minute, maybe to help you better understand from where I came, or cometh, or goeth, or be witheth. So when I was born in 1941, Boston Medical Center was Boston City Hospital. That's number one. Number two, we were in the middle of World War II. Okay. I was born and raised in Roxbury, right in the middle of Roxbury. And we were a colored family, okay? And my mom and Miss Lewis and Mrs. Cass and Ruth Batson, women like that, I grew up around all my life with no thought about it. They taught me in their own way, without me knowing or feeling, how to become an activist or how to be an activist. Because not only did I hear their words daily, but I mirrored their persona, their personality. So I saw them in all kinds of ways. And each way that I saw them, I knew it was the truth. At least it was the truth to me then. I can remember being 5 years old and hearing them sit around my grandfather's table, Mrs. Cass and Grampy, who belonged to the Fathers Club at the Shaw House, talk about how they were going to get the union for the railroad workers, for the porters. That's where she was working with A. Philip Randolph at the time. Now, I'm just a little kid back in my bedroom, laying in bed. I couldn't wait for them to have meetings so I could hear all this dialogue. So listening to them taught me how to talk about it and how to walk about it. So I want to say, boy, I can't believe I'm so excited that I can't talk. This is a whole new experience for me, and I can't wait until one day I have a platform where I can tell people about me sitting at Emerson and talking to all of you this way. This is like unreal to me. This is like, I don't know, the Academy Awards or something. I just want to let you know how exhilarating and how special you've made me feel. And I hope I don't walk around with a big head about it. But I think what we're getting ready to do, not counting today, or not today withstanding, is that as we move forward and get to know one another, certain questions will come up because you can't do it all when you're just meeting people. But what I'd like for you to do is go away and think about it another kind of way. Like, I met a woman today who actually grew up as a colored girl in Roxbury. All the women around me call themselves colored. I'm a colored girl, we're colored people. I didn't get to know anything about being a Negro, being Black, and being African-American until maybe after I was 17 years old. So you got to imagine the, what's the word I'm looking for? The devastation, for lack of a better word, that all of a sudden, somewhere they wrote it down or told me I was no longer what I was. Okay, and how do you deal and handle all that? I will say that I learned how to handle and deal with all that because I have Miss Lewis in my life every day. On one end, I had my mother in my life every day. On the other end, and in between, I had Mrs. Cass. Okay, so I didn't even know I had all these cushions. I'm a visual learner. So I would watch Miss Lewis, her body language, the way she talked on the phone, the way she scratched her hair, the way she made him get a pencil and a pad of paper and write down things she was saying. I learned from that how to act. And I don't mean phony act, you know, like in the movies. I mean how to present myself. So what I'm gonna do right now is kind of step back and maybe hear from you guys because emotionally I'm getting very tired because along with what I'm trying to say to you, I literally go back in time to that place. And I can even tell you the room I'm in, you know, and what they look like and so forth and so on. So if you will pardon me and allow me to have that space to sit back and collect myself, because we're getting ready to go on a journey and I really appreciate you helping me get through this emotional time. Thank you so much. I love you guys, even the ones I can't see. You know, I love you all too.
Thank you, Helen. And that that's one of, thank you so much for the vulnerability. This is not easy anyway, but then to do it on camera. And it speaks so much to why this archival process is radical. And it's not necessarily because we're using certain terms for things versus others, or we're highlighting only one political movement over another. We're going to the bone and the root, you know, as Alexis Pauline Gumbs talks about going to the bottom of the ocean and then going beneath that. And as we drop in, and we've been going for about 1.5 years, we talked last year at the teach-in, but it's how we approach the whole work in the Social Justice Archive Network and really just with each other, that it's not about rules, it's about relationships. And relationships have rituals, and they have roles. And we are in relationship with each other, and that relationship doesn't end when a official story circle ends, right? Like
Right.
what happens is we're blown wide open and we're connected. And so what does that mean? And I'm trained as a historian 20 years ago. I had a PhD in history. And it wasn't enough, like that training. It was important to be able to study it, those 3 letters, PhD. They're helpful, they open certain doors. But the traditional way of academic archival work is not this. And this is slow. It's, not, it's, lots of people say this, but Adrienne Maree Brown says it of terms of it's an inch wide and a mile deep. And so we're in each other's lives now forever. And that means something. And so we don't always even know when we start where we're going to end. And so when we create a structure or a form to it, it's more like a portal into different ways of channeling the stories and the information. And after each one, I'm strung out. I feel like a rag that delightfully and wonderfully and painfully, all of it, like everything you can imagine is just squished out. And then all the fluid is like out, and I'm just these bones walking around, and we have to go out and eat a meal and be together. And anyway, so that's why we talk about this in terms of time travel, because it's not just gathering information, and it's not just extracting for the purpose of a product. And so, yeah, that process. And Helen, you've gone on such a journey, like from, it's not even one end to the other because it's not linear.
No, I don't know how to, I'm trying to figure it out. Okay, so I said yes to something like being in this spot right now with you. I had no idea it was going to be anything like being in the spot like this with you. And I also learned that because I was with these women who were dynamic in their own right, and that's also evident, I am who I am. Okay, it can't be helped. And I've worked for Life magazine. I've worked for everything I did. I was like director of, like the community services department at the New England Conservatory, which got me to work in the prisons in partnership with the Men's Y. I ended up working for the Department of Corrections as a director of community volunteer services, brought in 2,500 people from the community to work in programs, got promoted to director of human resources, wrote policy, so forth and so on, went to Walpole. I've been in every prison in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, spoke at strikes, at uprisings in all the prisons during Attica, designed theater arts programs, so forth and so on, went on to work for the Urban League as director of the Mature Worker Program. These are just to name a few, because I did double stuff while I was doing, like, say, work for the New England Conservatory, let's say, as director of the Community Services Program. I also worked with Dick Gregory. I also worked with Coretta Scott King because she graduated from there. We did a project, all these auxiliary things, and multitasking all the time, over here, over there. So it's a lot of stuff, so much so that I forgot. However, it now understands, that just goes to show you where my head is. I'm beginning to understand that I did more than I think I did because I was taught to do more than think about doing more. because I was raised, I met Miss Lewis at 8. The day I was born, Mrs. Cass was at my bedside, my mother's bedside, praying over her because she knew what she was getting. Okay, so I've got all this stuff that is actual on the books and practical for 8 decades, while in the middle of surviving major vascular surgery, where I couldn't walk 14, 15 months ago. And today was the first time I could wear shoes, and I'm walking, I got on these gorgeous, sexy boots that would knock you out. Okay, so here I am in the middle of what I am in the middle of, wrapping myself around it with every ounce of gratitude I got in my little body. I just found out today that when I was director of the federal government's mature worker program for the Urban League, Ashley was a student in training at Smile Daycare right across from the Urban League, where I placed mature workers to learn how to get a job so they could get off the program in 2 years and earn at least, wait till you hear this one, at that time, $8 an hour. It is a wow. It's a wow. So that's how my life is evolving. So thank you very much. God bless you, Miss Lewis. I hope that I am adding some kind of dignity to your trail. And I know as time goes by and I settle down and get used to this kind of exposure, that I will be more succinct, more comprehensive, and more detailed in the way I present, so that each one of you will have a certain kind of takeaway. But what is helpful for me is if we ever do this again and you all put me in the spot that I'm in now, what would be helpful if you would have some questions? I'm real good at answering questions. I'm challenged by trying to figure out what to tell you that you need to hear or want to hear, or how to be entertained and comfortable so you will listen to hear. You know, all that goes in that same pie. So you would help us out greatly if, now I sound like Brene Brown, daring to be daring greatly, who I love, by the way. If you would come up with some questions, and they can be really pointed. I mean, you can talk about, what about this interracial thing? You can talk about what about racism, go deep. You can talk about what it's like in prisons on the real side of it. I mean, I was in Block 10, I was at MCI Walpole. I was there when, whatchamacallit, B.B. King was there. I went with John Boone, the first Black commissioner of the Department of Corrections in Massachusetts. So there's a lot of stuff. Go back in history if you want, bring up stuff, ask me, I probably know. Let's get it out. Let's put it in some kind of form that we can do due diligence and act upon it, write policy about it, or look at it in a different, doable way. So thank you.
Thank you, Helen.
All right, sorry.
I'm asking if people want to ask some questions, it sounds like that's where we need to move right now. So we can open it up. And you can drop questions in the chat. Because of recording, we are recording. So if you want your voice, if it's okay for your voice to be recorded, that's great. But if you don't, we're asking that folks drop in the chat. You can either put it to everyone or you can direct message me. If you don't want to be recorded, let me know now. So that will be a form of, yeah, rather than 68 people giving consent.
Wow.
Yeah, 68 people are here.
Thank God I can't see you. Thank God.
Okay, so it looks like, so if you drop in, I'll give it a few more seconds just to make sure that everyone's consenting to be recorded if you use your voice. Okay, and I'll read some questions in the chat, and there was a heart. I think it's Sharon Schiffer. I don't know if Sharon wanted to say anything or was just giving some love.
I'm just giving some love. Thank you so much for everything that you've shared today, and I really appreciate it.
Oh, great, thanks.
So there's a question, and apologies for name pronunciation if I don't do it correctly. Maya Dagger, Maya. How is the work you're doing now in the Elma Lewis Center different from the work and activism you grew up doing?
Yeah, okay, this is what makes it different. I have all you women that are smart. I mean, if you can understand that. When I was growing up, not everybody was astute and on point like you guys are. Okay, there was a group that were and a group that was not. So the group that was did all the work. The group that was not, in quotes, not that they weren't relevant, but they would do like errands, help to get people to contribute, cook, stuff like that. The other thing is, what's different is this whole thing. Boy, if we had had Zoom and the technology and the mobile phones and the Uber and the Zuba and the Wooba, we would have been off the chain. So a lot of what's happening now is I am so fortunate to have had, wow, 8 decades of learning that and then bringing it into this century and then working intergenerationally, which is brand new. Back then, people in my age group or the older people, okay, not old, but older people, they didn't associate with us like we all do right now. We had our place and damn it, we better stay there. Okay. And we only, I think a lot of our activism came from breaking away from that harness or that bond or bind they had us in, that we couldn't say this, we couldn't do that, we couldn't think this, we couldn't go there, we couldn't do that. We had a lot of that, my generation, especially if we had some balls about ourselves. We fought that kind of stuff, okay, which made us even more of an activist in the certain arenas that we went into, because we weren't afraid. I'll stop there. I hope I answered your question without going around Robin Hood's barn.
Thank you, Helen. There's more questions in the chat. I'll go there. If you are wanting to say something, I'm going to ask you to unmute yourself. I can't see the whole grid, so unless Ashley, you want to, if there's another way, but right now I'll go back to the chat. Diane Panson, how will we see the living stories? So great question. So the Living Stories project will be made more fully public in September of next year, so September 2022. You can also see it as it grows every third Thursday until September 2022. And that is online. And we will be sending out information on the Elma Lewis Center website. We also are on Instagram, Facebook, and we promote the information that way. And those are on Zoom, and everyone is welcome. And sometimes we even have people from across time zones and continents. Last time we had someone from Ghana join us who also knew Miss Lewis. And so that's how you can get involved there and see it. Also, if you go to the Elma Lewis Center website, there is quite a lot of information there, more descriptive about who Elma Lewis is and about our process. And then we also we have something called a digital guest book where people are leaving happy birthday messages or leaving messages for different dimensions of life around Miss Lewis. So last month, which was last week, we did a series on the early years of the Elma Lewis School of Fine Arts, the early years, 1950 to 1955. And that's important because, because it is, but also because there were 3 arson fires that burned almost all of the records, thousands and thousands of records up till about 1969, 1970. So it's really important. People are the living history and their family albums. And you can also just call the Elma Lewis Center and we'll guide you accordingly.
Can I say
Yeah.
one more thing? Because I'm thinking as we go on. You can ask, I met Miss Lewis when I was 8. Okay, so all the way up till now, to this moment today, I have been, and she has been in each other's lives. Get it? Get that part? So any question about Miss Lewis that I don't think to tell because I get all excited and overwhelmed, that's why I'm opening it up. Whatever question, I don't care what it is, that you would like to ask about her, that you really know you can't ask somewhere else about her like that, please, please, don't be shy, ask us. Because 9 times out of 10, I have an answer or I have a reference that I can send you to. Because I want each one of you, at the end of the day, to really know this woman who drank fraps, who got on the phone and hung up on people, who didn't swear, but you wish she did because what she said was even more hurtful than if she did swear, that kind of thing. And how she moved and grew to get things done that maybe we can extrapolate and take some of that genius and make it work in our programs now. Okay, so I will, this time I'm really done. I'm shutting myself down, but I just wanted to make absolutely sure that any question that you have in terms that you would like to know about her or any of life that it was like for us doing what we did during World War II and on in the Vietnam War and the war against the turkeys, just go be free enough to ask. I guarantee you, I will have an answer or a reference.
Thank you, Helen. Kevin Bright is here to talk about some of the great people Miss Lewis brought to Roxbury, like the Duke Ellington, Muhammad Ali, and many others. And why was that important?
Okay, I
Yeah.
can't speak to you about Duke Ellington because I didn't meet him through Miss Lewis. I met him through another channel. And Muhammad Ali, I met in New York. I did not meet him through Miss Lewis. However, I have a colleague of mine. Her name is Sandra Fury Gaither, who brought Duke Ellington to the first Playhouse and Muhammad Ali. So when she's on pool and when she's going to be at some point, you can ask her all about that. I can tell you about the first playhouses in the park that are not recognized. They all started in terms of dates and how do you say it, tracking history when Duke Ellington came. That is not true. The Playhouse in the Park started, I think I was 15 when Playhouse in the Park started, okay? And some of the other people like Tally Beatty, Arthur Mitchell, Oscar Brown Jr. Now I can talk about them because they would come and stay at Miss Lewis's house and we would do round table. And I was a little kid, but I was there listening and taking notes. And I could tell you certain things that they were describing and talking about, like I learned about, I can't verify whether it's true or not, but who actually, Tally Beatty swears that he did the original choreography for West Side Story and that Jerome Robbins stole it from him. His words to my ears. I can't put it in writing, but these are some of the things that they talked about. Arthur Mitchell talked about how when he left the ballet, how he opened up his own ballet school on Harlem. Oscar Brown Jr. couldn't understand why he was at Miss Lewis's house and then there were no liquor stores in the neighborhood. How he couldn't go right outside because he was from New York and staying in New York at the time and go get a can of beer. So I had to walk him to Chauncey's liquor store right in Eggleston Station so he could get a beer before Miss Lewis killed him. So it's all that kinds of stuff. If you ask me questions, memories will come back.
You know, we could even do a session where we do that. It's just ask Helen. We could do a future one like that. And that's what we do is we ask questions and then we've been in story circles for hours. And because Miss Lewis was involved in dance, in theater, in prisons, in politics, and transnational politics, was a Garveyite. Also art, visual art, National Center of Afro-American Art, Black Nativity, Langston Hughes, Black Nativity, and more. And so because of all of that, it's not at all, no history is anyway, but it really isn't linear, it's kaleidoscopic.
Right.
It moves right across, and there are so many people, and Helen is one of the people who is the closest.
Right.
And
Like-
so go ahead.
Like Black Nativity, I'm sorry. The first Black Nativity, Audrey Walker was Mary. And the first Black Nativity was done at the Lewis Junior High School. And John Ross, who's no longer with us, wrote the score and redirected it. You can get more, what's the word I'm looking for? You can get more dynamic, pristine kind of explanations about it through Barry Gaither, who runs the National Center of Afro-American History. I'm only giving you what I actually in the room felt, touched, and witnessed. So any response to questions that I have, I will always say, I don't know that. Talk to so-and-so, or I will tell you exactly who was there, how I felt, where we were, what was said, so that you can soon begin to develop a way of your own persona about this whole journey.
I know, Priscilla, you also have experienced this archival process a certain kind of way. I wonder if you want to share a little bit too. And I know you and Helen talk about it.
Sure. I think in my mind, there's a bridge being drawn between the living stories as, the project that we're doing, and then also a reflection of this legacy, that this work is not something you do, but something that you become. So it's felt like that, like a real becoming and deepening of my own sense of self, especially here in Roxbury. So I live in Eggleston Square. I've lived in this house a long time, bordering almost 15 years, which is wild to say. And when we first started this process, it was incredible to learn that Miss Lewis lived on Homestead, which is just 5 minutes from my house, and that Helen lives right down the street from me, and that these histories were happening in the very park, Franklin Park, that I've walked in pretty much every day, all the time that I've lived here with our pets and our kids and our friends. I think that for me, that's been the most resonating element, is that it's broadened the scope of my relationship to the place that I'm in, and deepened my sense of understanding about not just these stories and these histories, but how I fit in and what my part is in prolonging sort of the narrative or extending the narrative about Black Boston specifically. That was one of the things that first attracted me to the project, was that Boston externally is really presented in a white dominant narrative, right? In terms of sports teams and schools and research and MIT and all these things that are kind of, it's a white face when people think about Boston. And oftentimes young people, which is my sort of career history, has been working with young people in youth development, all Black and Latino and immigrant students who are born and raised here. who meet people from outside of here and say they're from Boston, and people are like, what, there's Black people in Boston? And this has been a reminder that Boston is Black, has always been Black, and the way that it stands is because of Black people, and these amazing Black artists and creatives, people who in my mind are, you know, giants and incredible titans in terms of propelling art and propelling access in the city. But I think one of the most affirming elements is through Helen learning that this is really about communities of people, that none of these people ever actually operates alone. And so when we learned about Miss Lewis, we really get to learn about all of these other people who are living today, who made it happen, who were there alongside her in the prisons, there alongside her at Playhouse in the Park, at the National Center, at the school on Elm Hill Avenue, at Emerson, right? That there are people whose living histories are here today, right now. So it's such an honor and a humbling too, because it's really easy to, I think, look back and assume that, I don't know, like Helen said, you know, if the folks of that time had the tools they had today, you know, they'd be wagging their finger at us a little bit, because there's a lot. I think one of the questions was like the distinction between then and now, having not been there then, but learning through the stories and memories of others. I think one of the biggest shifts is that it's a way of life and it's a way of being with one another. Like Helen said, everybody sort of fulfilling their role, whatever that role is. Mm-hmm. I get the distinct honor of being, you know, a listener to hearing these stories and to helping them take some shape, and then amplifying them and zooming in and letting people get to know them a little bit differently, so that when they walk through the South End, they understand the history and recognize that that's a Black neighborhood of Boston, that it once was Roxbury, but later got sliced up, right? As we see in lots of cities. So for me, it's been extremely grounding, affirming, inspiring, empowering, especially learning from Helen and these women who were around her at the time, and remembering that they were really young women. They were, you know, in their teens and 20s, having these really big, deep visions about what young people needed and what the city needed, and leveraging for that, and not really getting caught up in the no, right? Or the injustice, and just figuring out a way to plow forward, which is, I think, a message I definitely needed to receive, especially after the, you know, turmoil of living through a pandemic and all of the other, you know, sort of oppressive forces that we live in modern reality, to be reminded that it's always been harder, and folks were able to triumph and create something really beautiful. So just trying to live up to it, honestly, doing my best to honor, to remember, and then to live that out in the things that I want to see change, or the things that I want to participate, how I want to be as an artist, as a parent, and really as a community member in the city, which I often felt like an outsider in. I grew up in New Hampshire, family, and I'm from Puerto Rico, but so always ni de aquí ni de allá, like not really knowing where I'm from. But this has been a reminder that I'm right where I'm from, in community, with folks who are focused on sort of centering and being grounded in reality and truth, and creating a better opportunity or better future for young people. That's a lot, sorry. That's how this goes too, is we just kind of we free fall into the experience, and we don't even know what's going to come up or how it's going to emerge.
Thank God for you, Priscilla. I could have never put it, do what she said.
I'm just a mirror. I'm just a mirror, Helen, you know, and you're my mirror, and that's the experience that we get to have together.
There's a lot, I mean, when you were talking, all this stuff was popping up, you know, like, oh God, like, you know, the program we did, the Jazz Institute we did at MCI Norfolk. The first time I ever walked into a prison with Dave Farrington from the Y, who wanted to partner with the New England Conservatory. By the way, every entity that I say I worked for, I went to work for, like with Kevin White, with Gunther Schuler at the New England Conservatory, like John Boone at the Department of Corrections, and so forth and so on. If I mention a place in Boston that I work for, It was because on my application or whatever, I put down that I was also a student at the Elma Lewis School of Ballet. Whatever my education was, she was automatically put down as a part of that education.
Mhm.
How come was that natural? Because I started with her when I was daggone 8 years old. So I never saw a split or a difference. It wasn't what I didn't go to dance school. I went to ballet school. So that's a whole nother tribute. So what would happen is Gunther would call, or Kevin White would call, or John Boone would call, and I'd go on and on. And they would call Miss Lewis, and they would call Miss Cass, because I'd leave both them as my references. And then they would come back, like Gunther Schuler would come back and say to me, I guess we have to hire you, because Elma, he could call her Elma, we couldn't. Because Elma said that if I didn't hire you, it would be the biggest, dumbest mistake I could make ever. And it was that kind of feedback that I would get. So if it wasn't for her ushering the way that she ushered, many of the positions that I happen to have to move forward to get creative, I would not have had. Okay.
Thank you. for-
Sorry.
No, you're amazing. So I'm mindful of time. I really don't like to play this role, especially in these optics, but I gotta, so thank you to Anna, who said that is leaving to pick up their son from school, and Jabari, thank you for your words. And thank you everybody for being here. So I wrote in the chat, I'll just read what I wrote. We're mindful of time today. We want to honor the schedule here of the teach-in and all of you. So we'll move to close here just for the moment, but please let the questions and the connections continue. You can reach us at the Elma Lewis Center. Helen is a senior archivist here at the here in the Elma Lewis Center, and is usually here on Fridays. So if you're interested in, write us first so that we just know how many people, and we're still in pandemic care and all of that, but just so we know, but we welcome you here, and we hope if you want to come by, you can also write us an email, you can call, right? And
Absolutely.
Helen will also get back to you, or any of us. And we just really appreciate you. We had, we'll be editing this, and then we'll release it again, and try to respond to some of the questions we couldn't get to in the chat. So we'll be moving forward with those things. And we're going to close. And we usually, the way we do this is people say goodbye. They drop their emails, however you want to go. And we'll be here a few minutes chilling and grooving. We'll end with a little music, so we don't just like drop out of the portal. And it's hard to do that with a little vibration, So if you want to stay for just a few more minutes, we'll leave it open for the duration, and you can ask us some more questions. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Helen. Thank you, Priscilla, Coco, Ashley, and Chia is here making photographs behind the scenes.
Thank you so much, everyone, for being